Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, April 22nd through Sunday, April 28th, 2024. This week, I have a lot to say about the astrology. There is so much to go over, so little time. Before I get into that, though, I did want to address the thumbnail super quickly. So, it is not my intention whatsoever to make light of war. I understand that we live in very precarious times. These are stressful times for many of us. There is a lot going on. You don't need me to tell you that. There have been so many earthquakes lately, eruptions, earth changes, and that is pretty much what most astrologers would expect from Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus. We just experienced that before this week's forecast. So that will still apply to this week as well as even the next couple weeks. We've experienced those earth changes, earth events, and there's also the threat of war as well. Not just, civil war here in the United States, but also the potential for world war as well. And I actually wanted to talk about that a little bit. I think that many of us in the West, specifically the United States, have taken for granted the peace that we've experienced in recent decades. It wasn't that long ago that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States was basically unrivaled. So we had, little to no threats, especially here in North America. We were kind of in this bubble, so to speak. And I think it's easy, whether we're talking about us on an individual level or even as a society, it's easy to expect that what we're currently experiencing will continue. But that is, of course, never the case. Everything is always changing. And I did want to give you a little bit of encouragement because, yes, we are entering perhaps disturbing times where there is the threat of global conflict, regional conflict. However, I'm not here to try to scare you. I wanted to let you know that if you're here and you're listening to this, wherever you are in the world, that alone means that you have survived. Your ancestors have survived. Your ancestors have made it through incredible times. I'm sure that you have your own unique stories, in your DNA. We all do. We have ancestors who have experienced famine, war, regime changes, all kinds of things, So it's not necessarily the end of the world. We do live in a chaotic world, but we do our best. We survive. We adapt. That's what this is all about. That's what the astrology is all about. So that being said, let's get into the astrology because, like I said, we don't have a lot of time. There's so much to go over. So I did mention the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction already. That has been pretty wild. It's definitely, something to consider that Uranus is in fall and Taurus. It's not really comfortable there. This is a long-term transit that we're kind of in the middle of. It's going from 2018 to 2026. And the reason why this is especially relevant right now is because Jupiter has caught up to Uranus. It's just barely past Uranus as of just a couple days ago as I'm making this video. And so, Jupiter is also kind of out of place in Taurus as well. Taurus is all about being conservative. It's about stability. It's about the earth, the economy as well. It has many different manifestations, as most signs do. But it's mostly about stability. It's about things that we want to be consistent. But putting Jupiter and Uranus there, these are not consistent energies by any means. Jupiter and Uranus are all about expansion and growth. And, that's where you get this energy of earthquakes and, volcanic activity, earth changes, etc. Also, huge changes with our economy, that kind of infrastructure. How do we support ourselves? All of this is changing very dramatically. So not only do we have that going on, but also I wanted to go over, just on a very general level, the combination of so many Aries placements and transits that we've experienced recently. The sun has left Aries, so we are moving into Taurus season, putting even more emphasis on Taurus and all of those changes I just mentioned. However, we still have Venus, Chiron, Mercury, which is still retrograde, as well as the North Node. Those are all in Aries still. And so what I wanted to go over is this combination of Mercury retrograde in Aries, as well as these other multiple Aries placements. And what you get is this really interesting combination that we've, by now we're weeks into this. We've been experiencing this for a while, but we're not done yet. We're experiencing this combination of huge Aries energy, which is all about, pioneering. Let's go forward. Let's not think too much about anything. Let's just move forward. Let's take action. We're going forward in a very volatile and forthright kind of way. But at the same time, Mercury is retrograde, so that's where you get this really interesting crossover. It's a little bit contradictory. We are moving forward in a very powerful way, but at the same time, we're also kind of going within and going backwards. So again, it's contradictory. It's a little messy. Let's just put it that way. And just to give you a couple of examples from my personal life, I just started a job, and it's actually a job where I used to work years ago, going forward, blazing the path forward very rapidly, but in a way that's like going backward at the same time. My very close friend is moving, but he's moving back to where he grew up, moving forward, taking action, but doing so in a way where you're going backward. These are just two random examples from my personal life. I'm sure that you have some of your own as well, though. I just wanted to illustrate that. So, very dramatic, very tumultuous. This is changing, though. At the time of my making this video, Mercury is pretty much stationary, and that leads me to my next point. Mercury is preparing to go direct this week. Mercury has been retrograde for most of this month. It's preparing to turn direct, and it will do so on April 25th at 15 degrees Aries. And I guess I am getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I did want to mention that at the onset of this video, though, because keep in mind that this is not something that happens in a day. Yes, it does technically happen on the 25th of this month. However, Mercury, just like with any planet, when it's going from retrograde to direct, it's not an immediate movement. It has to slow down. It's basically at a standstill for a few days from our perception, and then it gradually will move forward. And as it does so, this changes the way we experience Mercury's energy. As Mercury slows down, it intensifies. Mercury is usually this very quick planet, which is, going here, going there. It's the mental energy. It's scattered. But at a time like this week, Mercury is traveling uncharacteristically slow. And this means that its energy is focused. So keep in mind, this is a turning point. We're transitioning from Mercury retrograde to Mercury direct, transitioning from going backward, going within, to going forward. And this is going to be especially powerful because of the Aries focus, because Mercury is in Aries. So like I said, we're moving from this like contradictory going forward, but also going backward at the same time, to by the end of this week, we're going to be moving forward full force. It'll all just be Aries, plus the Taurus placements, but Mercury will be moving direct in Aries. So we have a lot of loose ends to kind of tie up, and I'm speaking on an individual level as well as on a communal level, as above, so below, of course. But what's going on in your life? What have you learned a lot about? I think many of us have learned a lot recently or experienced a lot of significant life changes. Part of that is just because the chart has been so intense. There's been such a heavy pileup in Aries and kind of spilling over into Pisces and Taurus. So I think all of us in different ways have experienced this huge focus, this huge intensity on this or that part of our lives, depending on where that lineup fell in our own charts. So again, what has kind of transpired over the past couple of weeks for you? Because whatever that is, whatever you've learned, whatever part of your life those changes are in, that's where I would expect huge movement forward. This is like the chariot energy. If you follow tarot, you're going to be moving forward in a really dramatic way in whatever part of your life that represents for you, and that's really going to get going after Mercury turns direct this week. Let's actually look at the chart for that. So actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm a little scattered, but I wanted to show you this chart. So I know it just looks slightly different. This was the chart for April 22nd. This is the very start of the week. Now I'm moving to April 23rd. And this brings in a whole different event into the equation. This is the full moon that will happen at 4 degrees Scorpio. This chart is actually for noon Eastern Standard Time, so it's not the exact precise chart for the full moon. But you can see here that the sun is at 3 degrees Taurus and the moon is at 0 degrees Scorpio. It's just entering Scorpio around noon Eastern Standard Time. So you can see that this full moon, if you want to get technical, it's going to happen, maybe the kind of late afternoon, I would guess, of Tuesday. But honestly, that doesn't matter. This full moon energy, like with most full moons, it's going to fill up the whole day. And you may even feel this give or take a day or two from this exact day as well. And this is particularly notable because this is the first full moon from the eclipse season. So in other words, this is the first full moon that we've experienced in a while that is not an eclipse. So we can at least kind of rest assured that we don't have to experience more drama in that kind of context, if that makes sense. But let's kind of talk about the characteristics of this full moon. So again, sun in Taurus, moon in Scorpio. I always say it's not just about the full moon. It's not, well, let me rephrase that. It's not just about the moon in a full moon. A full moon is a moon sun opposition. So really, in my opinion, it's about the polarity, the axis, the relationship between the moon and the sun. The moon would have no light if it weren't for the sun. The moon reflects the sun. So the moon, it would of course exist without the sun, but it wouldn't have any light. So moon in Scorpio, sun in Taurus. This polarity, the Taurus Scorpio axis, has everything to do with possessions and how we support ourselves. Okay, how do we support ourselves? So this is, largely it has financial implications, but also implications with the environment, anything that kind of supports us, whether it be on an individual level or a collective level. So much of that is material in nature, Taurus. Much of it is also emotional or spiritual in nature as well, Scorpio, and it not only has to do with physical resources that we have on hand, represented by Taurus. It also has to do with kind of speculative resources, agreements that we make with others, collaborations represented by Scorpio. So either way, this is a fixed axis. So this is representing many things that we prefer to keep consistent. We are each in our own way. We're seeking to flesh out a supported existence. We want to support ourselves in a way that is secure, in a kind of long-term fashion, if that makes sense. However, when you get these transits, you can expect changes in these areas. It doesn't matter if we don't want it, if it's uncomfortable to us. We need to adapt in these areas from time to time. A full moon is definitely a huge opportunity to invest or to kind of adapt. I guess you could say adapt the way that we're investing, or adapt kind of how we're supporting ourselves, making changes in those areas. But keep in mind as well, we still have Jupiter and Uranus pretty much conjunct around 21, 22 degrees Taurus. It's not at all conjunct the sun or opposing the moon for this full moon, but it is in the same sign as the sun, if that makes sense. So it's kind of just adding this like turbulence, and it's adding this potential for disruption and change to how we support ourselves, but also in a more optimistic light, opportunities, room for growth. How can we take advantage of these changes? Maybe there's a better way to support ourselves. With Jupiter and Uranus, there can often be epiphanies, so realizations. And adding to this, full moon in Scorpio is kind of famous for lighting up the darkness. Scorpio, how do I put this? Sun is in Taurus, but it's shining the light on Scorpio, shining the light on moon in Scorpio, excuse me. And Scorpio is all about, getting into those mysteries, shining the light into the darkness, making the darkness known. It's about bringing up, all the falsehoods, mysteries, misconceptions, and Scorpio has this hyper awareness. So it's all about, becoming aware of what was previously unaware. Does that make sense? So this is this is a really great potential time for awakenings and figuring things out. This can be, well, on the one hand, it can be exhilarating. It can be very exciting. I know that if you're listening to this, you are a truth seeker. You're interested in mysteries and deep things. That's why you're interested in astrology. But on the other hand, even those of us that are, so curious and so interested in exploring these dark topics, even the most bold of us can be frightened, scared, uncomfortable with sudden change, I think, and sudden realizations. Whenever you're realizing something, you, by its very nature, you're not sure what you're going to find, and you may not necessarily be looking for these truths that will occur to you this week around this full moon. It may be things that you had never even pondered, had never even wondered about, and yet it's going to kind of come to you in perhaps a very visceral way, again, on or around this full moon. So definitely something to be aware of. It can be scary, it can be startling, but this can also be uplifting. This can really help us increase our consciousness. It's kind of like, it's like working a muscle. If you do a really hard workout, you could maybe get a sprain or a cramp or something. we kind of need to pace ourselves if we can, but at the same time, no pain, no gain, as they say. We have to kind of break our muscle down in order to become stronger. I think the same is true for our consciousness. So these are just things that I think might be interesting to think about for this full moon. Lastly, let's kind of tie this forecast up together and let's move to Thursday, April 25th. This is the day where Mercury turns direct. So again, remember all that context I gave before that, we're going through this process. It's not just, Mercury's retrograde one day and direct the next. As I went over, we're in a process of, slowing down, bringing intense focus to this or that part of our lives. Perhaps, again, this is another thing suggesting that we're realizing a lot of things and encountering increased awareness. So, again, that's where chart reading gets really interesting, when you start seeing the same or a similar theme kind of boomeranging over different parts of the chart, if that makes sense. So that's what I see. I see a lot of us waking up to different things. So it's a turning point. April 25th, it is significant because, this is the day where Mercury's at a complete standstill, basically, if that makes sense. So it is, technically it does make that shift from slowly traveling backward from our perception to gradually it will move forward. And I'm getting chills. This is going to be extremely exciting moving forward, and there's always like the yin and the yang. There's the pros and the cons. This can be tumultuous, it can be volatile, it can be scary, it can be stressful. But on the other hand, this can be exciting. Where does Aries fall in your chart? I would really be surprised if you weren't making a lot of progress in that area. So, what house does Aries fall in for you? What general part of the chart is it for you? That's where I would really encourage you to look. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me. You can ask me in the comments. And I'm always here to help for sure. Okay, so yes, Mercury turning direct at 15 degrees Aries. And if you wanted to give even more detail to this, do you have any placements specifically around 15 degrees Aries? I actually happen to have my Lilith there, but you may have something else there. That would represent a part of your life where you're having a huge turning point, a huge shift, a huge realization, etc. But like I said, we are fully moving forward after April 25th. It will take maybe several days for Mercury to kind of wake up from its slumber, so to speak, and gradually gain momentum. But as it does, it's about to get wild. It's about to get interesting, as I said in the thumbnail. But yeah, I mean, I picture like what are those toy cars? I've used this metaphor before, but those toy cars where like you pull it back, you like you build up the tension between like the tires and the floor or table or whatever, and then you let it go and the car goes forward really fast. Or you could also picture like a race where if we're in the cars, we're like revving our engines, and as soon as that it's almost like Mercury turning direct is the starting whatever I don't watch races, so I don't know, but it's the starting signal or whatever. That's what Mercury turning direct is, and yes, it will take a couple days, but at the same time, things are going to start moving very fast. And as above, so below. I'm talking for you individually, for me individually, for all of us, and for all of us collectively as well. Things are going to start moving very rapidly. So yes, I really am not here to scare you. I think this is exciting. Like I said, I don't want to downplay the significance of these events that we are experiencing. I understand to the best of my ability the weight of it all. But at the same time, I think my personal approach, I use humor to get through my dark times. I like to keep things light. I'm Gemini. I have a lot of Gemini placements. So that's what I do. What do you do? But all of us have our own ways of coping with these things. Okay, I have some exciting stuff to talk about next week, so definitely tune in if you like hanging out with me. Next week we have Venus entering Taurus and Mars entering Aries. They're both going to be at home in their respective signs, so I think that's so refreshing after all this crazy stuff that we just experienced. And we have a third quarter moon, so never a dull moment. Definitely check in with me next week if you want to. I really hope that something I said moved you or helped you in some kind of way. that's what I want to do. I'm here to help you if I can. So, okay, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out with me. I really hope you have an awesome week, and I'll talk to you later.